forza, resistenza, velocità e focus mentale. Questi sono soltanto alcuni dei superpoteri che un imprenditore di successo deve padroneggiare. Le sfide che affronti ogni giorno ti stressano, ti affaticano e consumano inesorabilmente le tue energie. Ma un altro eroe sta per scendere in campo e ti consegnerà le armi più avanzate per combattere i nemici delle tue performance fisiche e mentali. Gli atleti che ha allenato hanno vinto medaglie olimpioniche in oltre 17 sport diversi, tra cui 10 record mondiali. È autore di ben 8 libri sull'allenamento e sulla forza e ha scritto centinaia di pubblicazioni nelle più celebri riviste di settore. La sua missione di oggi è quella di proteggere, aumentare a dismisura e perfezionare le tue prestazioni fisiche e mentali per non lasciare mai il fianco scoperto alla concorrenza. Conosciuto in tutto il mondo del fitness come il guru della forza, supereroi della vendita, date un caloroso benvenuto a Mr. Charles Poliquin!
Grazie mille.
It's for you, sir.
All right, I'm going to start with a bit of history. So we know that the Greeks invented sex, but luckily for the Western world, the Romans introduced it to the women. So first I want to thank Frank's team for inviting me. They did a very good job. They're very professional. And I want to thank you, all the attendees. So preparing to teach here in Parma, I said I'm going to learn Italian. So I said I'm going to also enjoy myself. I'm going to use efficiency. So I watched Gomorrah. The problem is all the words I learned were like called nuto, stronza, cocaina. So it was not very useful in my job, especially when I go through customs. And I've got a Napolitano accent, so they thought I was a mafioso. So then I said to Frank, can you teach me Italian? So we would do Skype sessions, and he would teach me Italian. So for example, the first lesson, I asked him, how do you say pleased to meet you? And Frank taught me this. So they had a bizarre reaction when I said that. So I started not to trust Frank. And then he was teaching me colors and foods and whatever. So I said, okay, this is a lovely purple dress you're wearing. So he said, this is how you say it in Italian. I don't know why she slapped me. So the most important sentence of the day is, the first thing you put in your mouth in the morning, provided it's food, will modify your neurotransmitter production for the whole day. So the first bite you take will decide if you're happy, if you're driven, if you're motivated. And so it's so important to have a good breakfast. I'm going to explain to you how it's a shortcut to success. What you first put in your mouth in the morning is essential for progress. So 75% of the battle is how much energy you have. Okay, so your brain is your most prized possession. You got to view it like a treasure. But people nowadays, they drink Coke or Monster drinks. Okay, so I'm going to give you alternatives. My goal when I teach is always that the students in the class make more money, happier. Okay, so I'm going to give you some tricks. The problem with these drinks is actually they age your brain prematurely. They're neurotoxins. So you may feel good for a while, but they actually destroy your brain. So for example, lion's mane is a mushroom that you find in the forest. It looks like this, okay? And then if you drink it, it actually repairs your brain, okay? So you have more focus, but it also repairs your brain. Why? Because it increases the secretion of BND-F, which is brain-derived neurogrowth factor. So it's like a hormone, a growth hormone for your brain. In the morning, you want to make 2 yang neurotransmitters. Yang in Chinese medicine would be like the flame. Yin, it would be the oil to the lamp. So dopamine is the neurotransmitter for the battle. Okay, so if you do karate, if I chase my neighbors or zombies, I need dopamine. Okay? But dopamine is very important for special forces. So the guys have to have courage and they have to have drive. You, as an individual, you need dopamine to get out of the bed and accomplish your goals. So I do a lot of work. 10% of my work is with special forces. But for example, the Canadian Special Forces have actually espoused the paleo diet. They've cut their carbs, increased their protein. I'm going to tell you later why it's so important. But the first thing you should eat in the morning, as much as possible, should be raw meat. But, you know, there's a lot of myth on red meat causes cancer, blah, 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 bullshit, okay? So it's the quality of the meat that makes a difference. So I'm very lucky, I live in Colorado, but I also believe that you make your own luck. So yak is very good, boar, elk, wapiti. Wapiti is a special animal because you can only find it in northern Canada, and you can only get to them if you shoot them from a helicopter. So these animals only see wolves as predators, they run a lot, and they eat grass that is taller than them. So the meat has glycogen, so it tastes a bit sweet, but also it's really high in omega-3s. So if you ever go to Canada, you can only find it usually in Quebec. Make sure you treat yourself to wapiti, then you'll say, okay, that's real meat. Now you got acetylcholine. That is the other yang neurotransmitter. It's the molecule of paying attention. So if you work as a bodyguard, let's say you work for the Secret Service, please do not take pictures of the slides. The last person who took a picture of my slides, I rearranged his face so he can bite walls, and he's in room 316 and 318 at the hospital. Okay? So paying attention is very important for a lot of jobs. The best way to increase acetylcholine is to have choline precursors, which are nuts. Okay, so that's why I've created the Meat and Nut Breakfast. It's my most translated article in the world. It's also my most plagiarized article. Berries are very good to give you more acetylcholine. So, but some of you should not have berries. You need to deserve your carbohydrates. Okay? The problem is people indulge too much of them. Then you have, in the evening, we have the yin neurotransmitters, which are GABA and serotonin. So how do you increase serotonin? Now, you are very motivated people. That's why you took time off from your friends and your family and you're here, right? So usually entrepreneurs are bang, 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 I want more yang. But the strength of the flame is a function of how much oil you have. So if you don't have time off, you're never going to be rested enough. And I'm going to talk a lot about how much work should you actually do. So one of the ways to have is to plan every Sunday night 4 hours of fun that has no purpose. Okay? My daughter and I, we like to go shooting. Okay? And even when she was 12, she said, Papa, you know, I really like shooting. I said, why is that? She goes, it's like meditation. I said, why do you say that? She goes, well, if you don't concentrate, you don't achieve the target. Okay? So very young, she realized that shooting, yeah, it's a skill, but it's also mental training. Okay? You can't shoot accurately and fast until you concentrate. So GABA is the molecule of centered calmness. So you can keep your attention focused, but you're not hyped up. So who needs the most GABA is snipers. Snipers sometimes wait 3 days before you shoot somebody, so they cannot be trigger happy. Am I doing okay with the speed? Is it too fast? All good? Raise your hand if I'm speaking slowly enough. Slower? Okay. My apologies. So, one of the best things you could have to have centered calmness is reishi. Reishi mushroom extract. This is actually the first botanical that was studied by humans. Okay? In Chinese, the botanical is called the botanical for the professor who lived inside his head too much. So it allows you to take away anxiety and to relax and to focus your attention. Is that better? Yes? No? So rice and beans is a type of meal that increases serotonin. So it increases the amount of happy chemicals. Serotonin is increased by carbohydrates. So that's why if you start, the first thing you put in your mouth in the morning is orange juice, you're stimulating serotonin. Yeah, you'll be happy, but you're not motivated. Okay, so you have to make a choice. Eating meat first in the morning will increase your drive. So let's talk about diet, because from what we've had as a feedback, you guys want more dietary information. So let's talk about vegans. Does it make you stupid? Yes. Okay. The Germans have determined that if you choose a vegan diet, you have a lower IQ, and if you go on a vegan diet, it lowers your IQ. And in Switzerland, you can take away the children from the parents if you give a vegan diet, because that's considered abuse. Okay, one of the myths we hear is like, meat's bad for you. It's a myth, because if you look at it, Hong Kong is the country in the world that eats 3 times more meat than the average worldwide. And what you will see in countries where they don't eat a lot of meat, the IQ is lower. So if you look at Hong Kong, they eat the most, and their IQ is 108. India eats 3 times less meat, and their IQ is 82. Okay? So meat, if it's quality meat, of course, will improve your brain drive. So if you want to be a good business person, you need to have a good brain. There's no choice. But also, if you want to be a world-class athlete, you need a good brain. Okay? So eating meat is critical for your performance. So now, when you look at diet, it's very, very confusing. Some people will say you need to eat 15% proteins. Some people will say, no, you need to eat 70% protein. Carbohydrates, some people say you should eat 0. Some people say it should be 80%. Fats was evilized or demonized. Until a few years ago, they said fats should be 10% or less, which was very stupid. And then some people nowadays say, no, your diet should be 70% fat. But if you read all these books, you're going to go, well, who is telling the truth and who is not? The important thing you need to know is your genetic background And there are certain rules which apply to all humans. So the word protein comes from Greek. It means first importance. So in the traditional native diet, they eat 4 kilos of meat a day. My grandmother was native Indian. She had 16 kids. She weighed 45 kilos, but she ate 2 kilos of meat a day. Okay? So she lived to be 88, so meat did not affect her life expectancy. So the traditional American native diet is a lot of meat, a lot of fats. The only carbohydrates were berries, and some would have wild rice, and that's it. Now, the most studied population for food in the world are the Pima Indians, and they're from Arizona. Their genotype is designed to handle 800 calories a day. That's not much. So in Quebec, Canada, they start to study the Pima Indians. The problem is that they now live on reservations and eat an American standard diet. So Coca-Cola, chips, donuts. The average American eats 60 dozen donuts a year, okay? And they eat 160 liters of ice cream. No wonder they're so fat, okay? So what happens is you have people who are designed for 800 calories, and by age 4, they already have signs of arteriosclerosis. Okay? The life expectancy of a native Pima is 38 years old. Before they were put in reservations, they lived up in their 90s. So you have to eat according to your genes. I'm talking genetics, not these genes, okay? So Inuits, some people call them Eskimos, but it's actually an insult if you call them Eskimo. They eat 70% fat, 28% protein, 2% carbohydrates, and they do very well. But their genotype has evolved with such a high fat diet. But if you give that diet to a Serbian, he's going to die. Okay? So you have to eat according to your ancestorship. And then you have Mesopotamian diet or African diets. They have more carbohydrates naturally, and they thrive on that. So the rule is very simple. The closer your genetics come to the equator, the more carbohydrates you can eat. But the further your genetics is from the equator, the more fat you need in your diet. So the best percentage of macros depends on your ancestry. Okay? But now we eat a modern diet and we look like this. So this is very important. Write this down. Where you store your fat is an indication of your hormonal system, whether it's working or not. So for example, if you pinch the skin on your triceps and you're a male, it should be below 4 millimeters. In other words, you need to have penis skin on your triceps. Okay? If I can pinch a lot on your triceps, your testosterone is low. Okay? So British man, Irish man, Australian man have very low testosterone. Okay? And to the naked eye, you can see they have fat arms. Okay? So the fatter your arms are as a male, right, less testosterone you make. So for the abdominal fat, that's what we call insulin sites. So So the more fat you have on the abdominal wall, it is because you did not control your carbohydrate intake. Now, something you should understand is that there is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. So, I divide the room in two. I put this half on an island, and I give you proteins and fats. No carbohydrates. I take the other half, I put you on a different island, and I give you carbs and fats as much as you want to eat. Then I leave. I come back 6 months later. These people are healthy, they're thriving. This half, they're all dead. Okay? The only carbohydrate that is essential would be fiber. Okay? But you don't really need carbohydrates to live. Then in the US, you see things like that. It's called back tits. Okay? So she has so much fat on her back that it's overflowing. Okay? When you have back tits, it means that the fat in the upper back is supposed to be brown fat. Brown fat burns white fat. Okay? With this woman, because she eats 60 donuts, okay, I don't eat donuts, so she eats my 60 dozen donuts a year. Okay? My daughter does not eat donuts, she eats them. Okay? And it shows on her back. Anytime you eat pastries, you consume trans fats. Trans fats, according to the American Medical College, are one of the worst things you could have. They're actually banned from the food supply in Canada and Norway. When they banned trans fats in Canada and Norway, McDonald's almost went out of business because they had to change all the recipes. Okay? So the safe amount of trans fats is 0. Okay? It's very, very bad for you because one of the problems of trans fats, it makes you insulin resistant. So eventually it leads to diabetes. So I remember I was in Tuscany teaching for Sandro Cicciarelli, and I stayed at the hotel, and for breakfast they had coffee, chocolate pastries, all sorts of pastries, bread, jam. And I asked the guy, where's the meat? And he goes, if I had an aquarium on my head, I would have looked more normal than asking meat in Italy for breakfast. So I had to ask Sandro, can you please tell the hotel owner that I need to eat meat? And the guy was really surprised, but I said, all my students who are coming tomorrow will need to eat meat. After 2 weeks, the guy was very happy because he made a lot of money. But how you start the day influences the whole neurotransmitter cascade. Now, if we look in bodybuilding, you have Ben Pakulski. His ethnic origin is German-Polish. Then you have Milos Sarcev, who is Serbian. If you look at the difference between the two physiques, his back is fat compared to him. Right? His back is very, very lean. Serbians can tolerate carbohydrates very well. It is the genetic pool of Caucasians. So everybody from the former Yugoslavia, so Serbian, Croatian, Kosovo, Macedonia, and so on, they can handle carbohydrates very well. Because compared to Norwegians, they're closer to the equator. Far from the equator, no carbs. Closer to the equator, more carbs. Does that make sense? So the fat here That is the fat that you control. Insulin is the only hormone that you have over 100% control of. No one has ever been mugged by a dozen donuts. So if you're fat from insulin sites, it's your fault. We have a site we call Australian site. That's the fat in the lower back. That will reflect if you have inflammation in your intestines. It also tells us that you're so bad at managing your insulin that you create inflammation in the body. So if above your ass you have a shelf, you have a lot of inflammation in the body. So this is a case of a really bad Australian site. So here's a tip. If you want to find fat people pictures, I go to peopleofwalmart.com. Okay? So Australian site, I repeat, is inflammation or bad gut bacteria. Subscapular is genetic ability to handle carbohydrates. When I test people, whether they're business people or athletes, this site tells me if you're allowed to have carbohydrates in your diet. This reflects how much stress you have. So cortisol and insulin increase abdominal fat. Now, I'm not pulling this information out of my ass. Every 6 months, there's at least 1,400 medical studies that confirm this. So I've developed a software where I measure your body fat in 14 different spots, and then the computer tells me what's the priority. So in this person, it's Australian fat storage. In that case, we look at the gut bacteria, so we do a digestive stool test, and we measure inflammatory markers like highly sensitive cross-reactive proteins. So I'm going to show you a bikini model who asked me to help her with her diet. She's won many IFBB bikini shows, and this is what I did. So on the left, that's when she's fat, and then, so there's abdominal fat, and you see her abs, the linea alba shows up, and you can see she has divides in the ab. Here, she has nothing. The only change was that I increased her protein by 20%, and I cut her carbohydrates by 20%, because she had very low fat in the upper back, but she wants to win a bikini show. Therefore, for her, it's best to decrease carbohydrate intake. Okay, so in the shortcuts to success, life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. That comes from Joe Polish. One thing I strongly believe in: there is no point to be the richest man in a cemetery. So my daughter one day comes out there, she was watching a show on felines, and she goes, "Papa, there's only 57 armor leopard left in the world. You have to do something about it." Okay. So I inquired, and there was a tiger refuge 50 kilometers from my house. So my daughter and I started to adopt tigers. So I own 26 big cats. So that's Magnus, he's a Siberian tiger. We have some lions we adopted. So that's Athena, and this is Zeus. And then I got cougars. That's Louise. So when I adopt them, I can name them. Vegans write to me if I post a picture of my tigers, you're a cruel man, blah, blah, blah. But really what we're doing is rescuing tigers from bad treatment. For example, Mike Tyson had 3 tigers, but he used to punch them in the face. And one day the mother tiger grabbed his head, pinned him down. So the Las Vegas police came and seized the tigers. And those tigers were in my tiger refuge. Sometimes it's movie actors. The lion played in the movie. They don't need to do him for the movie anymore. They're going to kill it. So I say, okay, I'll adopt it. So over the years, I've adopted 1 to 2 big cats every 6 months. Okay? And nowadays, something I strongly believe in is that don't be the richest man in the cemetery. You need to donate money. And the thing is, that is counterintuitive.